I want to start off this morning asking how courageous do you think you really are? How much courage do you think you have at your disposal? How brave are you? If you are called upon in a very terrifying situation to step up, to do something courageous, how much resource do you have inside of you that would say, I'll answer that bell? I used to, years ago, watch this show on TV. It was called What Would You Do? Anyone remember that show? I heard it's going to make a return, potentially. It was like a Dateline thing. A guy named John Quinones. He was this TV guy. He would use hidden cameras and actors, and they would build these scenarios, create this kind of scenario, and then the cameras would fix themselves on ordinary people watching what they would do in certain circumstances. It was fascinating. Ordinary people trying to figure out how they'll react, whether they will take action in the moment when something happens, or will they just pretend they didn't see it and walk away. And I'm thinking about some of the different scenarios. A Muslim woman wearing a veil and a burqa is denied service at a bakery because she's Muslim. And so you have innocent bystanders sitting there watching this whole thing. Do they speak up or don't they? In a park, 3 girls verbally attack another girl. Again, bystanders watching. Do they step in? Do they back away? A woman parking in a tight parking spot backs into a car and then realizes it and then goes and parks in a different spot. There's people watching the whole thing go down. Do they go over to her and say, hey, what's your license plate number? You better be reporting, you better tell this. Or do they, not my problem? Person with an overflowing shopping cart enters into the express lane. I can tell you people have been in that one for sure. And all the cameras are fixed on the faces of those that are standing in line looking at this person. What do? Yeah, so they would create all these various scenarios, and then they would just wait to see. Do people make split-second decisions? What do they do? Yeah. Often these situations often pose some kind of risk. And so will people courageously step up or not? Every time I watched that show, I have to be honest, it created a little bit of conflict in me. Because I would invariably imagine myself in some of those scenarios. And often, I'm sitting there being honest with myself going, I don't think I'd do anything. I don't think I would say something in that scenario. In fact, many times I thought, God, I can't believe that person is just taking that person to task over that thing. I'll be the first to admit this morning, I don't think I'm the most courageous person in this room. I'm not. I mean, there are times when Kathy and I are at a restaurant and my soup comes in and it's cold. She's like, what's the matter? I say, my soup's cold. That waiter comes around and says, hey, is everything good? I'm like, yep, fine. Kathy's going, actually, I'm going, his soup is a little, no, it's good. You know what? I like cold soup, but I don't mind cold soup. The other day we're in a parking lot, superstore parking lot, and I hate that store. But anyways, I'm driving out of the parking lot, Kathy and I, and this guy, there's lots of traffic. And I'm coming along, and this guy darts out of, actually in front of us, pulls right out, and I slam the brakes, and Kathy's looking at this guy, and out comes the big finger wag. And I'm going, Kath, what are you doing? She's like, he needs to know. You don't just, I'm like, pah! You don't start something like that. You don't know if that guy's got something he's going to. Kathy's looking at me like, you can't just let people do. I'm like, hey, I'm fine, I'm good. I'm a lover, not a fighter, Kath. I like to say, I'm simply doing what Jesus would do, Kath. Maybe not. Anyways, that's my line. There have been many times I've been in situations where I'm like, and I look inside myself and I go, I kind of struggle. Probably doing the right thing for fear of the conflict or whatever. You ever find yourself in that position? I know probably in this room, there's probably half of you that are going, oh yeah, for sure. And then others of you are going, nope. I would love that opportunity. I know, it's just, perhaps it's personality. But I tell you, a lack of courage, it can pinch the spiritual journey. Despite what many people think the spiritual journey is really, it's not just the kind of the big walk in the park, in the beautiful, calm, serene meadow that many people envision the spiritual journey to be about. In fact, often the spiritual journey requires a lot of courage. It's much more daunting than most people expect on the front end. They come in, they're going, man, I just want more peace. I want more, I want to experience something more and something deeper and wider. They don't realize the spiritual journey is really an invitation into something that can require all kinds of courage. It could be an invitation to have an awkward relational conversation that requires some truth-telling and vulnerability. It could involve challenging a long-held, cherished belief. It could require accompanying someone through a tragedy or an injustice. It could involve confronting some kind of harmful behavior that you're witnessing. The spiritual journey actually can call on all kinds of courage, which has been problematic for me at different times in my life, if I'm really honest. Because I believe that there have been different times when I'm in a moment and I think I know what the right thing to do would be, and I'm backing away. Spiritual journey will call on this. And by courage, I'm talking about that ability to do something that frightens you, that unearths you, that is unsettling. Sometimes courage is really just demonstrating strength in the midst of pain or grief. Sometimes it's overriding your emotional system to say, shh, be quiet. We need to stand up right now. We need to do something right now, even though you don't feel like it. If you're really low on courage and unwilling to develop it, the spiritual journey can become rather irrelevant. In fact, it can kind of become a bit of a charade, where on the surface you're going through the motions, but then when the real work to be done, the real beauty of the journey is inviting you to come in and actually change some reality in our world. We check out. Courage plays a big part on the spiritual journey. If you look through the Bible, it's littered with stories of courage being demanded of people. Moses, this stuttering guy in the middle of the wilderness, all of a sudden It's like this divine energy invites him into a plan, into an assignment, saying, our people, the Israelites, are enslaved to the Egyptians. I'm inviting you to go and take on Pharaoh and free our people. Little Gideon, the most insecure guy, is visited by this angel in this story saying, I need you to lead your tribe, your people against the Midianites. Will you do this? And he's going, I'm the least of the least, man. You're talking to the wrong guy. And the angel says, no, I'm talking to the right guy. Will you do this? Esther, this woman in the Bible, was tasked with going on behalf of her people who were about to be literally exterminated based on a new law. She had this relationship with the king. Someone from her people says, will you please go to the king on our behalf? She knows that by asking for a favor, if the king looks at her and says, how dare you ask me for that, she could have her life taken. She's given this assignment. Joshua, I could go on with the stories. He's asked to lead the Israelites into the promised land that is full of warring giants. They've already gone in and scouted the land. They see these massive, they call them giants. All the other spies are coming back going, we do not want to go in there. We do not want to go in there. Josh says, let's go. Normal people witnessing difficult, dangerous assignments, and somehow they override the system to step up and do the thing that they're being asked to do. Now, whether you look at these stories as real historical stories, or you look at them as kind of metaphorical stories, doesn't matter. In fact, they become more powerful when they're metaphor, because each one of these stories really is an archetype of you and I. It's simple people who are invited into a spiritual assignment, saying, come, I have something difficult for you to do, and will you answer the bell? That's the pattern. To do something that will heal, that will confront, that will comfort, that will rescue. Usually the assignment, just like the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell, is an invitation for each one of us when we step out into that land. It calls you to grow up. It calls you to say, you were a grade oneer when I gave you this assignment, but you wait. Wait till you come through this assignment. You're going to be a completely different person. The spiritual journey is not for the weak of heart. It's not for the timid. It's not for the people who continually love to say, not my monkeys, not my problem. I don't need the hassle. I'm just worried about my life. I'm just trying to get ahead. I don't need to be worried about these other things. The spiritual journey is not for those kinds of people. The spiritual journey is often an invitation to give a shit about someone else. And that's when the courage is needed. These water assignments, these missions, these opportunities that require courage, we believe are some of the most sacred and central to the spiritual journey. Some people think their church attendance on Sunday morning is kind of the epitome of their spiritual journey. I go, you're kidding, right? This is just the training ground. This is why we call it the spiritual gym. You're lifting in here. You're thinking hard, processing stuff, experiencing stuff in here so that you can get out the door and actually do spiritual work. Interesting. A guy named Epictetus. He was a Stoic philosopher, one of the famous guys. He described the spiritual journey in a way, actually, he described life in a very similar way to how I would describe the spiritual journey. This is what he said. He said, don't you know life is like a military campaign? One must serve watch, another in reconnaissance, another on the front line. So it is for us. Each person's life is kind of a battle, and a long and varied one too. You must keep watch like a soldier. Do everything commanded of you. You have been stationed in a key post, not some lowly place, and not for a short time, but for life. You are like a soldier on a mission. And your role is to be obedient to what you've been asked to do. That's what he says. It's like a military assignment. Not for the faint of heart. If you want in on the spiritual game, to be among those who are moving the dial, who actually at the end of the game, at the end of your time here, you will look back and go, man, I made some contributions here. I actually changed life in some way, for not just for me, but for those around me. I made my world a little bit better in some way. You're going to need some courage. Which is fascinating. The Stoics would list courage as one of the top 4 virtues you can develop. Did you know that? It's one of the cardinal virtues. It says, of all the things, of all the virtues that you will develop and nurture and build in your lifetime, courage should be one of them. Found that interesting. Did you know that there are actually 6 different kinds of courage that some of the experts speak of? I didn't know this. This was actually good news to me because I was scoring really low in one of them. But I found some others, well, maybe I'm doing a little bit better than I thought. So this might be good news for you too. I want to talk about 6 different types of courage this morning. Probably what I'm hoping is that after it's all said and done, you might identify some strengths, but you might also maybe see some areas you're low in. The good news is you can develop them. That's the good news. First type of courage I want to speak of is physical courage. I think this is probably one of the stereotypes of courage, you know? Kind of courage we need to overcome some kind of fear of physical harm, pain, or discomfort. You know, this is the guy that's willing to run into the burning building to save the family, risking being burnt, risking even physical death. Physical courage can take on other forms too, though. I remember sitting in the waiting room with my wife, Kathy, when the nurse called her and said, "Kathy Jarvis." And I could see Kathy swallowing hard. She got up, getting ready for breast cancer surgery. Not really knowing what they were going to find, how bad it was going to be. We both stand up. I give her a hug. Man, my heart's in my throat, and I couldn't even imagine what she was walking through. And she walks through that hallway. I know there are many other people in this room who have watched the courage to face some kind of physical surgery. Thinking about Lori at the back, went through it deep. Sometimes even just the courage to pick up the phone when you know something in your body is not right. And you call a clinic or a doctor and you say, I need to come in and see you. And you're not sure what you're inviting. That takes a level of physical courage. But there are other kinds of courage besides physical courage. There's moral courage. This resolve to do what is right, regardless of the social backlash or the personal consequences. Moral courage reminds us of our ethics, our integrity, our character. I'm thinking about some of those brave people. I was reading about some of the most famous whistleblowers in corporate America, in the military, U.S. military, guys that came out and said, they are torturing people, just so you guys know. And that guy gets removed. Someone speaks up and says, I don't think the accounting that they're doing here is right. Boom, fired. Only later to have the wheels start in motion courts arise, people held accountable. The personal consequences that people have faced in order to speak their truth, to say what they're watching is wrong. Not even knowing what the repercussions would be for them personally. Moral courage can drive us to defend our values and beliefs at any cost, denouncing injustices, reporting illicit behavior. Moral courage pushes us to break the silence. It was Edmund Blake who said, "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men and women to do nothing." Moral courage. How do you score in moral courage? Then there's emotional courage. Many assignments on the spiritual journey call on emotional courage too. I'm thinking about a woman I'll call Liz, who had to swallow hard, get out of her car with her body shaking and walk into a therapist's office one morning. First time she had ever spoken to a therapist. For years, Liz had been in an abusive relationship and just hadn't been able to shake some of the trauma she experienced. It had been sabotaging her relationships ever since. But she didn't want to face it. For her in this moment, she believed that her spiritual journey was calling her to face some of the demons from her past. Emotional courage enables us to face these events, some of these memories that we have, perhaps, that have been left unresolved. Disturbing emotions that every now and then, unsolicited, start surfacing. This emotional courage refuses to hide behind any mask any longer. It says, quit frickin' smiling. You're lying. It pushes us to live more vulnerable, more authentic, more real lives. Without emotional courage, it's literally impossible to process trauma, to fix a relational breakdown, to grieve the loss of something or someone. There's people that are running from these things because they're worried if they stare into the face of those dark memories and emotions, they don't know who they will be. They don't know what will come out. They don't know how weak they will appear. So they keep running. Spiritual journey says, turn around, lean into that thing. Sometimes emotional courage can take on a different face. Another version of it is this psychological courage. This is an interesting take on emotional courage. This is when, as I talked about earlier, you just say, calm down. Your emotions are freaking out in the middle of some kind of chaos. This psychological courage says, shh, now is not the time. Buck up. Cowboy up right now. We got to get this thing through. We got to get these kids over there. We got to get through this week. Then there will be time. It maintains composure under stress during life's setbacks. When all hell is breaking out, it holds down the hatches. It says, come here, and it grabs onto people, even though everything inside is saying, wig out! Like an anchor, this psychological courage holds the ship steady. It can look like endurance. It can look like perseverance. This ability to persist through trials. This resilience that says, man, we're in a battle right now, but this battle ain't going to be won on the weekend. We got a couple months of this. So dig deep. We're going to get through this, but we can't give up now. This is a form of psychological courage. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you demonstrated different forms of this emotional courage? time when you either had to hold your emotions in check or when you had to stare into them and say, something is not right. Something's amiss. Something keeps eating away at me. I got a resentment that ain't going away. I got some trauma that just keeps haunting me. Then there's intellectual courage. Let me ask you something. Just put yourself in this scenario for a second. Can you imagine being raised in a very conservative religious home and church environment, where all your life you've been taught that there was something very sinful, something very wrong about those who identify as part of the LGBTQ2 spirit plus community? Something really wrong about those people. It's what you'd always been taught. But you live in a small, kind of isolated world that doesn't have any people identifying it in those ways. And so those people in your mind almost become monsters. They're making very sinful, selfish choices to do what they're doing. That's what you believe. In many respects, you've come to believe that they have an agenda against the church, against God, against everything spiritual. And our job is to fight that agenda, to fend off those people. And then one day, your son says, I got to talk to you. Okay. What's the matter? Are you all right? And he tells you he's gay. And in a moment, all that you have been taught and believed, all this framework of understanding of this enemy starts collapsing as you're looking at your own child who says, I'm that. And you're going, no, you can't be that, because that is evil. And all of a sudden, all these beliefs, all these theologies just start dissolving. And you're looking at this going, but the Bible says, and what is our community going to? This is a family that's woven into the fabric of this traditional church community. And all of a sudden, over the course of the next little while, they begin questioning and challenging everything that they had once been taught. All through looking into the life of their own flesh and blood, their own kid. And they're going, everything that I've been taught, it's not lining up with this. And now they begin wondering, what else have we been taught that might not be what I thought it was? This is where intellectual courage is often called upon. And I'm telling you, we have many people in our community who have grown up in certain environments, taught to believe certain things, and then life comes along from different angles and says, are you sure? And the fear that can create, because often these beliefs that we will hold, we've built massive buildings with. And you start rattling one foundation over here, and now it's like, what else is going to go? Please don't come along and start challenging this belief. Or this better not be wrong. And not this, please. Oftentimes, there will be people who will just close their eyes and plug their ears and go, no, I can't do this. I need this to be true. I cannot afford for anything else to be wrong because I'm worried that my spiritual life will fail. I'll lose my faith. This kind of courage, intellectual courage, pushes us to question our deepest assumptions. It says, are you willing to admit that we don't have all the answers? Stepping out of your intellectual comfort zone is part of what we tend to invite you to do here at Friends often. Actually, to be honest, we challenge you to take on all kinds of different courage with all these different ones, but many times we've watched people really struggle under this one. Last one I'll mention is social courage. Yeah, I was at a dinner it was actually a long time ago. My family, that's when a family member began to make fun of someone that was part of the LGBTQ community. Sorry, I'm using a couple examples from this thing, but remember at the time, I had just had a friend who just came out as gay, and that was one of the first times when I heard this guy mocking the gay community. I felt like he was mocking my close friend. And there was the invitation. Are you going to just be quiet and let him do that? Non-confrontational, Jeff. You're a lover, not a fighter. But inside, there is a sense saying, this is your assignment. Looking back, that was one of the first times I really drew the line in the sand over this with my family. Created all kinds of mess. But it was part of my spiritual journey. I'll look back, it changed me literally forever. I look at all of this, man, it's like there are these moments where the assignment comes, something sticks out. Someone saying, come on, and it happens so subtly, internally. And you begin to recognize there is an assignment. And as soon as you see it, then there's another calculation, and that is, man, how much risk is attached with the assignment? You go, what kind of danger? If I say yes to that thing, what am I inviting? Man, I tell you, you start measuring up the risk. You don't even know you're doing it, but you're doing it. You're going, do I want that? I don't. What will this require of me? And then as soon as you imagine doing whatever it is that's inviting you, then you start to feel the fear setting in. That's when the fear really kicks in, when you imagine yourself actually doing it. That's when the calculation of how much courage you need is done. And you make the decision, do I got it or no? It's in that critical moment that you choose. It's a deliberate choice. Am I up for it? Or am I turning around and just pretending I didn't see them hit that bumper? I don't know about you, but I want to be a part of one of these life-changing moments. I want my life to be marked by me stepping into the game and not just going and sitting on the bench and watching people make a difference in their world. I want to be one of the ones that answers the bell at the appropriate time. I don't know about you, but often fear makes the decision for me. It's part of my journey. And so I guess this morning, I don't know which of these 6 types of fear you would score low on, but I guess the question is, are you willing to develop? The Stoics recommend a couple different strategies for developing your level of courage. One is voluntary discomfort, deliberately exposing yourself to uncomfortable situations that build resilience. You just showing up on a Sunday when this is not naturally you, when it's like, you don't know everyone in the room. Some of you displayed incredible courage just showing up today. doing something a little uncomfortable. Sometimes introducing yourself to someone, if that's not who you are, is voluntary discomfort. Listening to someone as they talk about their pain can be, for some, very voluntary discomfort. For some, going and visiting someone in the hospital, I heard someone say the other day, I don't do the hospitals. I don't do them. I just, something about it. I say, well, maybe a visit to the hospital is exactly what your spiritual journey is requiring of you. Be ready. For me, I hate negative people. That negativity is one emotion I am just not comfortable with. And so I can dismiss and walk away in a heartbeat, but maybe the voluntary discomfort of my spiritual journey is inviting me to develop the courage to sit and just sit with it. Is there some area of your life where you just run? Maybe this week, your preparation of courage involves you saying yes to something you don't like doing. Just being courageous in little things. Eating alone in a restaurant. Sharing something vulnerable of your life where normally you go, don't ask, don't tell. I'm not sharing that. Disagreeing with someone. Maybe you're the agreeable person like me. Actually saying, I don't quite see it that way. Don't know what your little act of discomfort might be this week, but perhaps you'll choose one. The last thing I'm going to say is welcome some failure. Failure is really, it's sad, yeah. It's sad because many people will just opt out of anything for the fear of failure. And I got to just tell you, failure, the greatest failure is a failure to launch, failure to say, I'll jump in. My prayer for you this week is that you'll answer the bell in whatever way when called upon. Chances are there's assignments that are waiting for you right now, or assignments that you turned down this last week. You might even have a chance to go back and do them, but I hope you will. That's my prayer. May we be courageous people. May we answer the bell, make a difference in our world.